Hi, I'm David Bellman, and I have some very exciting news to report. This week, I had the opportunity to look at two very unique and historical items. The first item was a wedding band that belonged to Lee Harvey Oswald, and the second item was the rosary beads that belonged to JFK. These two items are absolutely incredible. They have huge historical value, and they'll be going up for auctions in October at my good friend's RR auction out of Amherst, New Hampshire. I want to thank Bobby Livingston in particular for bringing these items to me and asking me to help authenticate them for the auction. So the first part of the story I'd like to tell you about is the wedding band that belonged to Lee Harvey Oswald. As many of you may know, he was married, and was married actually in Russia. What he had done was he had defected over to the Soviet Union in the early 60s, and when he got there, he married a Russian woman. And they had a wedding there in Minsk, of all places, and exchanged wedding bands. And he wore his wedding band religiously. After they were married, a few years later, they returned from the Soviet Union back to the United States. Lee Harvey Oswald, I guess, decided that he had too much of the Soviet country and wanted to come home, and was able to bring his wife back with him. A few years after that, they had two children. Things didn't quite work out very well for them, and they became estranged and ended up living in two different locations, ultimately ending up in the Dallas area. So as part of the separation, they had agreed that Lee Harvey would come over on Fridays and visit with the kids. And that was a typical routine that they had going at that time. But on Thursday, the week of the assassination, that Thursday night, he comes over to the house early, and he says to his wife, I can't believe, that we're separated. I really want us to get back together. This is a terrible situation. Will you take me back? And she says no, flat out, just refuses to take him back. So he decides to spend the night there that night. And when he wakes up in the morning, his wife is still in bed. He says to her, "Don't bother getting up, I'm leaving." And then what he does is he takes off his wedding band, which is really very uncharacteristic of him, and he places it in a teacup on her dresser drawer, and he leaves all of his money, about $170, also on the dresser. Walks out of the bedroom, goes out to the garage, and gets his rifle and wraps it up, and a friend of his picks him up at the house, and together they drive to their job, which is over at the school book depository. That's where the wedding band ended up that day. He put it in a little teacup on her dresser. She never knew that it was there. So this Monday on June 8th, Bobby comes by with the wedding band, and he proceeds to tell me the story of, the story I just gave to you, and what had happened with the band, which is a very long story, which I won't go into completely because I want to go into the description of what happened. So as the wedding band came in, he wanted to find some way to authenticate it so that we could figure out if it was in fact purchased in Russia. So I start examining the ring. And as I'm holding the ring and examining these three little hallmark markings on the inside of the band, and as I'm looking at them, I can see that the markings are a little dirty and a little worn, but I can see clearly that one of them is marked the letter P with the numbers 101, and then I see this star, and then I see the numbers 583. Well, 583 is the metric equivalent of 14 karat gold that we see stamped in our rings here in the US. So that made sense. And then the star, which looked like the Russian star. And then in the middle of this teeny tiny little star, I saw these markings, and I jokingly said to Bobby, it looks like, the hammer and sickle. And he says, yeah, well, that would be hard to believe. But when I held it just right, and I looked in the light, and I reflected it off the star, and I'm looking at it with the loupe and really paying attention to it, I really believe that that's what I can see. And I cleaned it a little bit, and then we have a special video microscope that we use here at the store for examining diamonds, and I proceeded to put it under that scope to try to get a nice clear picture, if possible, of that hammer and sickle, which you will see in a minute. So it came out, it was very exciting. Nobody expected to find that kind of instant proof that this was actually his wedding band from the Soviet Union, but now there's no question, because that particular marking is a mint mark that's controlled by the government, because at the time in communist Russia, this is what they did. They controlled all the gold supply in the country, and they would put it into the system when they wanted to, and they had full control over everything that happened. So for about 20 minutes, we examined it. We had people here from the union leader, from WMUR-TV, recording the whole situation as it happened. And it was really quite exciting, and we had a really fun time having that particular piece here. So I hope you enjoy the images that I have for you today. I know I really enjoyed having the opportunity to take a close look at history, and in my next segment I'll tell you all about the JFK rosary beads. Thank you.